Welcome to Blackbird Writers Presents. I am Tracey S. Phillips, and today I'm talking with James M. Jackson. Thriller author James Jackson is the past president of the Guppies chapter of Sisters in Crime and a writing coach. He is the author of an instructional for bridge players called One Trick at a Time: How to Start Winning at Bridge. He's also the author of 8 books in the Seamus McCree series, as well as 2 novellas, Furthermore, and Low Tide at Tybee, and a spattering of short stories. Before becoming a writer, he was a consulting actuary working with corporations, governments, and nonprofits in the design and funding of their pension and post-retirement medical plans. His Seamus McCree books are thrillers with a financial twist, no surprise there, and they are set in real places, but he claims all the characters are fictional. He enjoys the outside more than being inside, so he brings that to his writing as well. Welcome, Jim Jackson.
Thanks. And yes, I prefer to be Jim unless you're mad at me, in which case James works. And if you're really mad, you can channel my mother and throw in a middle name and last name and dog's name and everything else. And then I'll know I'm in real trouble.
Right? Well, for clarity, though, if people are looking for your books, they need to find James M. Jackson.
That's
right.
correct. Yep.
Yeah.
And that was a publisher's decision because they wanted me to have a website that would match my name. And Jim Jackson as a website was already taken. So James M. Jackson, I am for fiction.
There you
Although
go.
the bridge book was Jim Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. I've never played bridge. So
well,
maybe
that's okay.
Yeah.
Lots of people have it, and that's fine.
In Wisconsin, it's euchre.
Yep. Or smear.
So first, tell us a little bit about the Seamus McCree, your character. He's a financial crimes consultant who, in book 1, in Ant Farm, he worms his way into a murder investigation.
Yeah, so his backstory is he started out thinking he was going to be a professional soccer player, and that didn't last. So an injury in his rookie year. So he went back, got himself an MBA, and became a bank stock analyst working on Wall Street. And he was top rated, so very good at what he did. But his bosses changed one of his reports one time because it dissed one of their corporate clients. And so he quit that and was hired on by this organization called Criminal Investigations Group to form a financial crimes consulting practice. And what CIG does is they work with police organizations who call them in to provide extra services that they don't have expertise for themselves. So that's how he got involved in the financial crimes world. And in Ant Farm, as you mentioned, he worms his way into not one but 2 murders. One of them is an actuary, a friend of one of the folks he sings in a choir with. Fiance was murdered in Cincinnati, Ohio, where Ant Farm takes place. And she convinces him to get involved to find out what's going on because the police aren't happening. And then CIG also gets him involved in trying to find out if there's some financial underpinnings to a murder of a bunch of retirees out in Chillicothe, Ohio, that were killed by botulism poisoning at a Memorial Day picnic. And of course, those 2 things ultimately are linked, but you'll have to read the book to find out exactly how.
Right. So I'm just kind of curious about like the character arc. But maybe before we get into that, I'm wondering if Seamus McCree is based on anyone you know, or
bears any resemblance.
Yes.
So you mentioned I write about real places. I do that. I do invent fictional places. For example, if a murder is going to happen, I don't want any real business to experience that murder. So that occurs in those kinds of any place bad is fictional, any place good is real.
Right.
But to make things easy for myself, Seamus and I share all the vehicles that we drive are ones that I had, so I know exactly how they work. The houses he lived in, I may have put them in a different spot, but those were houses that I've been in, and so I know exactly. When you walk in the front door, I know exactly what's to the right and the left, and all those kinds of things. It makes it easy on me because I don't have to keep meticulous notes from one book to another about, is the lamp on the right bookend, or the left book, those kinds of things, because I know exactly where everything is.
Yeah.
So that makes it easy for me. As far as personality, we share some things. We both enjoy the outdoors. I have him becoming a bird watcher, which I also am. We share some politics, but not all. And we're both runners, although he is younger, stronger, smarter, fitter, has a ton more money than I do. So the similarities end on things that really, really count. But the minor things are much like me. So again, it's easy to write his character from a first person perspective, which his character is always in first person. So we see the world through his eyes. So when he goes outdoors, he hears birds, he sees animal tracks, those kinds of things. He's not very observant when it comes to what clothes somebody wears because he doesn't care about clothes and those kinds of things. So
yeah. Well,
so in
great.
that to those extents, yes.
And that makes a lot of sense, I think, for any writers, to think about, what things can they draw on from their own experience to make it, easier, especially how you have 8 books in this series, right?
Eight books, 2 novellas, and probably 4 or 5 short stories, right?
So that's a lot of, keeping track of characters and places and place names and that kind of thing, right?
It is. And in my case, I also do things in real time. So he ages, unlike Kinsey Milhorn, who, Sue Grafton had her age, 5 years and 25 books or something.
Right.
It may be more than that. But in any case, it's been over a decade since my first book's out, and everybody's gotten older. So Seamus starts out being the father of a college-age kid, and by books 7 and 8, he's a grandfather of a wonderful granddaughter who can twist him around her finger quite well.
Yeah.
As in Grand Oath, we demonstrate when she gets him to make a pinky promise that it gets him in all kinds of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about the arc? Did you plan like a character arc for him or a plot arc for him?
I wish I could say yes.
You're winging
Unfortunately,
it.
I am a pantser by nature. I've tried desperately to be a plotter, and it's just not the way my mind functions. So I made a bunch of probably bad decisions early on because I didn't think out this whole arc thing. So the series starts off in Cincinnati, which is where I lived at the time, and then I moved from Cincinnati, and so Seamus had to move too. Things like that. That probably had I been plotting out, had I thought about what a long character arc over a series would look like, I may have made some different decisions. But because I have him aging through real time, even though he's younger than me, there is an arc that I've come to understand through the writing. So the writing really developed the arc for me. Again, that pantser kind of basis. And he starts out like many, he's a divorced father of one son. And he's very concerned about that son and sort of a little bit overprotective. And as the series goes on, that relationship matures to two co-equals. Towards the end, his son Patty thinking, he's now the stronger of the two adults physically, and those kinds of things. So, watching Seamus move through that. He started the series with a pretty big chip on his shoulder regarding his need to take responsibility for everything. I think that probably had to do with his father was a police officer, sergeant in Boston Police Department, and was killed on duty when Seamus was only 10 or thereabouts. And often, you're made to fill the male role, in quotes. And I think that's hung over them. And as the series goes on, he has learned more and more to actually rely on others and not take everything on his shoulders. He still has some work to go with that.
Yeah.
So those kinds of emotional arcs have all developed over the series in a way that I'm really quite happy about.
And I mean, that leads me to a question I think that a lot of writers have, I mean, I'm kind of following like what a lot of authors are doing, like with their query letters and that kind of thing. And we're told not to pitch as a series because you just don't know. And in fact, I mean, I had plans for a series with my published book, and and the publisher said no. But for an indie publisher, indie author, you might not have a plan, that extends that far, and all of a sudden maybe the series gets popular or whatever, right? And then you have to maybe kind of go with it.
Well, I think one of the things with if you have in your mind that you want to do a series, one of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to wrap everything up in book one.
Right.
You want to have open issues. And so if you have a very well described, rounded character, they can have sort of solved their personal crisis number one in book one. But there should be all kinds of other issues that they have to still work on that can take you forever. Like real humans. I mean, we fix some things and other things start breaking us, physically or mentally or whatever it is. But maybe Mother Teresa became perfect, or some of the saints, but the rest of us not so much. Right. So leaving some of those things open and leaving open subplots where you have multiple subplots. It may be a romance subplot, if that's your kind of story, or it could be family issues or something. Leaving those kinds of things open, and those can be hooks to tie back in.
Right. Yeah. And like I was trying to point out, if you have a book that you want to make into a series, I mean, I think that's, it can lead you, maybe I'm a pantser too.
Yeah.
But I like that about your character, that you've left him open enough to give you the story, his story.
Yeah, and I think the thing that as an author you need to do is you always have to have a very good reason for having your character get involved in whatever. We're both crime authors and we're talking about
Right.
crime stories here, but you need a very good reason to get involved in solving that particular crime if it's a mystery, or getting the individual in trouble if it's a thriller.
Yeah.
And so as long as you have that, you can then bring your character in and go from there.
Right. So you've been helping out authors for a while now. You were really involved in the Guppies chapter for a long time. And I know that you still have writing classes that you do, and you offer help on your website and everything. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, When I went to college, I thought I was going to be a math teacher, high school math teacher. And fortunately, that didn't work out because I would have been a lousy high school math teacher because I'm a really good teacher if someone wants to learn. And if you don't care, then, I don't care. And that's not so good for a high school teacher, but it's great for other kinds of teaching. And authors are a group that want to learn and they're willing to put in the effort to learn. And so what I found is that one of my skills, I think, is to have gone through a process myself in terms of learning and then be able to figure out ways to provide others that experience through a classroom setting so that they don't have to learn stuff the way I learned, which is by doing it all wrong and screwing it up and so on and so forth. So the bridge book came about from that thing. I learned how to play bridge to a certain level and thought the book was needed, and wrote that book. And that one's actually the one that got reviews in the New York Times and the Chicago papers and the bridge column and so on. So when it comes to classes for the Guppy chapter, one of the things that I found was that people tend not to have a good process for doing their revisions. A lot of people start out and they finish draft one, they say, oh, great, I'm done. And then, of course, they realize they're not done. And then they start from page one and start the revisions all the way to the end. And then they loop around and do that again and again and again. Or they end up concentrating because they've been told those first one or two or three chapters are the all important chapters, and they revise those suckers 18 times. And the reality is that those 3 chapters were all backstory and should end up in the cutting room floor. And the story really started with chapter 4. So all that work is for naught. So what I did is developed, it's a month-long course that has 13, I think, classes in it. And it provides a structure that people can follow that starts from working large down to working small and shows all the tools to do that. It's not, I'm not trying to force somebody into my structure. What I'm trying to do is give them a new set of tools that they can use and apply in a way that works for them.
Oh, neat.
So, and that class has been very well received. I've been very happy with it.
Yeah, I feel like revision is hard for a lot of us. So yeah, that sounds.
It's difficult to look at your own work and find ways to critique your own work. But if you have a system, then it makes it easier.
Right. And to see what's wrong. A lot of times we just can't see what's missing or what maybe shouldn't be there at all.
Well, and in fact, I'm a firm believer that you need to have other eyes look at your work. That you can't possibly bring yourself out of the work entirely to be able to understand its flaws. So whether it's beta readers or an editor,
critique group,
critique group, or whatever works for you, that there needs to be something.
Yeah,
to help
absolutely. You out.
Yeah.
And does your background as an actuary influence your writing?
So actuary per se, not so much, but I am a math geek. And I have always been interested in how people can game financial systems. So, and as a consultant, designing pension plans and so on that you went through and everybody's going. But in any case, what that did is it gave me access to CEOs, CFOs, head of human resources, boards of directors, to understand how it is that they operate. And then thinking from the criminal standpoint, how if I were a criminal in those kinds of organizations, how I might try to get away with something. So that's where the twist of financial crime comes in. Some of the stories are set with insurance companies as things happening within insurance companies, or brokerage firms, insurance brokerage firms, for example. Others are money laundering type issues, those kinds of things. But everything, from my perspective, again, I've always been sort of fascinated with, so how would somebody try to game that particular system? And fortunately, my parents did a good enough job of bringing me up that I never was tempted. That and the fact that I wouldn't do well in jail. So, and orange is not my color. So it's all, that part's all fiction.
Yeah. And then that makes me wonder, how did you get into writing fiction?
So, well, so I retired as an actuary, and I gave myself 6 months of telling everybody no. When you retire, everybody knows what you should do, and they've got things, assuming you're good at anything, they've got things they want you to do. And so I gave myself permission to say no to everybody and everything. And I did what everybody probably should do when they're much younger. I went through those, what colors your parachute, and the Zen of Work, and all those kinds of workbooks to say, what is it that you like to do? What brings you joy? All those kinds of things. And what kept coming back was writing. And it was primarily around writing nonfiction. But I certainly didn't want to write about actuarial stuff. And so I thought, well, let me try writing fiction. What kind of fiction do I love? Well, I've been a reader of mysteries and thrillers and crime stories since I was a little kid, starting out with the Bobbsey twins and the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew. And my father was a great Agatha Christie and Nero Wolfe and Ellery Queen fan, all those classics. So I thought, well, let me try writing a mystery. And that's what I did. And then in the twist of irony, the first thing I actually had published was the bridge book, which was nonfiction, of course.
Right.
But the fiction is what has stayed over the years. There may be another nonfiction book in the future, but we'll see. For
now, it's more Seamus McCree.
Well, actually, I am working right now on a spinoff. One of the characters in that is an undercover FBI agent who calls herself Nikki. And in Cabin Fever, you can find out why it is she calls herself Nikki. That's where she first appears. But she's been in several of the books. And I liked her enough that I thought it would be interesting to explore what her life would be like. Because one of the issues that Seamus is all about is fighting against injustice in ways of not just criminal injustice, but against people who abuse power. Mm-hmm. And certainly when we look at women who are in typically male organizations like police forces or the FBI or the armed forces, those kinds of things, they have a whole set of issues that are even stronger than the issues that most women face in our normal corporate world. So I thought it would be interesting to follow Nikki, and she's a really strong woman who doesn't take garbage from anybody, and see how that played out.
Well, that sounds interesting.
I think so. I'm enjoying writing her.
Oh, good. And I'm enjoying reading Granite Oath right now. Because you delve into the sensitive territory of immigration, which is very current. But I think it's touching how Seamus works through the problem with his young granddaughter and her preschool age friend. So I was wondering what kind of recommendations you would give other authors who want to write about, maybe any, sensitive topic like that.
Yeah. From my perspective, and I can't claim to be an expert on this, but the way that I approached it was that I did not want to be preachy. I didn't want to have a book that said, here's that essentially is saying to the reader, well, here's what you should think about immigration, because There is no one thought about it. There are lots of different views, and there's crossovers, and there's places where people agree and they disagree. And so I have characters who have different perspectives on it. But the part that I think, besides not being preachy, if you keep in mind that whatever the issue you're talking about, immigration in Grant O's case, it's a real issue for the storyteller is how does it affect the people in this story?
Mhm.
And so looking at Seamus's granddaughter's friend, Valeria is a legal U.S. citizen because she was born in the U.S. Her mother is a DACA individual, so illegal, brought in as a kid, and under this amorphous law that neither the Republicans or Democrats can figure out what to do with, is caught in the limbo. And her mother, the grandmother, is a traditional illegal who came over years and years and years ago, and whose husband has died. So the three of them deal with the whole immigration thing from three different perspectives relative to themselves, but also looking at how it affects the whole family.
Right.
You know, what you can and can't do. So, for example, when looking for the mother goes missing, and when looking for the mother, Seamus really is not allowed by the family to talk to the police because they're afraid of what will happen to the grandmother.
Right.
Or what will happen with the child if the mother turns up to be dead, or
To get thrown
something
into the
else.
system or something.
Right. Yeah, or doing something illegal, and so she loses her DACA status and gets deported. And so that puts real constraints on the whole situation. So looking at through the problems that whatever the issue is causing for the people in the story, I think brings the issue to the forefront in a way that people can relate to, and perhaps see in a different way, perhaps see in the same way that they've seen before. But that was my approach, and I've been happy so far with the way that people have responded to the book.
Yeah, and I do really like how you're using the three different, problems basically about immigration: the granddaughter, the mother, and the grandmother. So, I mean, it's just showing a lot of different possibilities for families who are dealing with that.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah. So I can't wait to finish it. I'm
okay.
powering through it, and plan on letting you know what I think in a few days.
Okay, well, that's good. It's interesting, that book, every time I read the ending, I end up tearing up. So I'll be interested to see what your reaction is at the end.
Okay. Well, I will let you know.
Okay.
So, where can our readers, our viewers find your books or you and your classes?
Yep. The easiest way to find out anything, where the books are sold, what the whole books are, all that kind of stuff, is at my website, which is jamesmjackson.com. And it's got links to wherever you can buy stuff. It's got links just for authors that talk about the classes. It has my social media links if somebody wants to follow me on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah, great. And do you recommend people join Guppies who are up and coming authors?
So the Guppies, first of all, you have to be a member of National Sisters in Crime.
Yeah.
And I'm a life member of that, and I promote that organization and what it stands for. Once you are, the Guppies are an online chapter, so you can join from anywhere in the world, and they have members from all over the place.
Yeah.
And it's really, I found it really supportive. The only reason I'm not still a member of the Guppies, I'm still a Guppy in my heart, but the only reason I'm not a member is because the chapter does not allow members to teach classes and get paid for anything. So I had to make a decision of teaching or staying a member. So although I was a past president and the webmaster and worked on their anthologies. And I still, right now, I'm editing one of their anthologies. They do a every 2-year anthology. It's a great, very supporting place.
Yeah,
I highly recommend
I've heard
it.
that. And then there's, I think they are also are recordings of tutorials and classes in the Guppies chapter website, right?
Yeah, they have a terrific library of past things. They've got a great newsletter as well.
Yeah.
So yes, great resource, and it's cheap. I think it's still the 12 bucks a year. So, you know, it's a bargain.
That is a huge value for $12.
I certainly think so.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for talking to me today, Jim. And I look forward to seeing you around in the interwebs and in our chapter conversations. And thank you very much.
And thank you very much for having me. I had a great time, and I look forward to seeing you as part of our Wisconsin chapter activities, both online and physically from time to time.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks. Bye-bye.